stuff in our life, it becomes so about us, we forget that God does that for other people. So I remember a brother, he was going through a difficult time, and so we were talking, and I just shared with him, look, I went through a similar experience. And so I was sharing with him how I went through the experience and the things that I learned about God from that. And he came to me later and he says, I want to thank you so much for that, because it enabled me to see what I was going through from a proper perspective and to see God at work. So we see that if everything is God's, God can do whatever He wants with it, and whatever happens in our life, there's a reason for it, but always, always at the core of it, God is to be glorified by it. He's at the center of it. So then when Paul comes to the prayer in 1 Corinthians 4 through 9, glory be to God for His grace, notice what happens. And the same thing that happens here. So this is the word for thanksgiving in 1 Corinthians 1:4. And here at the heart of it, charis, grace. Here is the word for grace. The grace of God which was given, dathese humin, to us, right? So here it is, the grace of God which was given. So Paul responds with, if you will, gratitude, right? So one has well said that this is, the grace is the theology of it, the gratitude is the ethic of it. In other words, if God has graced us, then our response should be gratitude. So here is what happens. God gives the grace to man. Man's response is to express gratitude to God. Therefore, God is glorified. But here's what the problem happens. And oftentimes when we look at the things that we receive from God, we look at the gift given and we stop with us, and that's the end of it. Sometimes we even forget the giver. We just look at the gift. This is what was happening in Corinth, because instead of boasting in the Lord, the giver of the gifts, they were boasting in humans, the recipients of the gifts, and the gifts themselves. And they lost sight of God altogether. And it is the same thing with Ephesians as Paul responds to God. God blessed us, so this is my natural response. I'm going to bless God. So whatever it is that we go through in our life, whatever it is that we're facing, whether it's like Paul sitting in imprisonment unjustly, right? He didn't deserve to be there. It was supposed that he did something he didn't do. He went through all of the suffering and everything else and all the stuff piled up on top of that. But as he sits and reflects on all the blessings that God has given us, his natural response is to bless God for that. 1 Corinthians, it's amazing, and I go there because you look at all the things that Paul had to deal with that church, all the sinfulness and everything, but he still found something to thank God for before he addressed anything else, right? And the same thing in 2 Corinthians. He will bless God before he starts to talk about his suffering and affliction. So Paul realizes that the divine blessings bestowed upon God's people should humbly, gratefully, and enthusiastically be acknowledged in thought, word, and deed. And that response is the only proper way in which these spiritual bounties can be returned to the giver, and therefore the circle is completed. So that's the question, and that really is sort of the thing for us to ponder for this next week. Is the circle completed? One, do we stop and do we give time to adore God for who He is and what He has done? And then do we respond in kind to that, not just in prayer life then, in our thought life and in our activities and everything else? Do we complete the circle? Do we glorify God by the things that He has blessed us with? The saying in the Westminster Confession, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. The chief end of God is to glorify Himself. It's His sole purpose. Sole purpose. And that should be the reason for everything in our life. So when it comes to our prayer life, do we take the time to glorify God? Is that the first thing that we do? Because I guarantee that if that is the first thing that we do, we will find that our awareness of who we are and our sinfulness will lead to confession. We will respond then with thanksgiving because of the grace and the mercy that God gives us. And then finally, we will move to supplication. But when we do, our things that we ask for will be radically different if we start with adoring God first. They just will. We will then see that our prayer will become more like Paul's prayer life. when we look at all the different prayers, 1st, 2nd Thessalonians, those books are full of prayer. Every single one is spiritually oriented, not physical. It's not physical. And I wrestle with that because in Ephesians, that really is what it is. He wants us to set our minds in the heavenly realm. Here's the thing, and just think about it. Why are we always surprised when we suffer? Why are we surprised when we get sick? Why are we surprised when things fall apart and things get broken and things hurt? When we understand as believers that the world is under the curse of sin, it should be no surprise to us that these things happen. They're inevitable, they're going to happen, right? It's inevitable. But somehow they seem to be the thing that consumes our thoughts and our desires and our aspirations. We keep trying to stay here, to be here, to live here, right? Rather than realize the reality of where we truly are seated with Christ in the heavenly places. If we can get our minds there and see the truth of what is really happening in our place in Christ, it will change in how we view everything else that happens in life. So that is the word, blessed. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, because He has blessed us.